I'm delighted to have this opportunity, but I'm very sorry that I can't be with you today because of serious family illness. But I do think this is a very important meeting that will have useful repercussions for a long time to come. So it's a privilege to be able to give you my point of view. I want to speak about the prevention of mass violence. My work with the UN and other organizations has always emphasized prevention. The hope for a peaceful, prosperous world in which we humans can live together without hatred and violence depends heavily on the humane, effective, creative democracies that have become relatively well established since the end of World War II and the dreadful experiences of the preceding centuries. Yet there is now growing jeopardy to those democracies as shown by recent research and political experience. Since the United States is the oldest of the established democracies and one that has provided so much inspiration and tangible aid to both established and emerging democracies, it is a matter of great concern that the anti-democratic trends have become visible in the 2016 elections and early 2017. These trends include the strongman, so-called strongman image to solve all problems, and severe attacks by the president of the media, the judiciary, and other institutions capable of implementing the fundamental checks and balances so important from the U.S. Constitution onward for 2 centuries and more. We have seen similar patterns that led to disaster in Europe and Asia in the 20th century as myriad aspiring leaders misled their fearful, angry constituents to consolidate extreme power in a few hands or even a dictator. Incessant dishonesty and propaganda and pervasive prejudices against ethnic, religious, and other groups can come together in deadly ways in the context of extreme and often fraudulent promises by authoritarian leaders. Thus, the U.S. is in a weaker position today, at least for the time being, and we certainly hope temporarily, for helping the other liberal democracies, let alone the aspiring democracies of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Moreover, as we have seen, such anti-democratic trends greatly increase the dangers of immense catastrophes, now even existential danger for all humanity, as I will return to in a little while. So it is of utmost importance that the established democracies understand the dangers and undertake honest education for their own countries and by all available means to overcome these trends, not only among leaders and influentials, but for the general public in its own self-interest, for survival reasons. Organizations and individuals participating in the quest for prevention of mass violence are striving to foster this education, to stimulate humane values, strengthen fairness in economic, political, and social spheres, and help to build a broad constituency for decent human relations. There is an essential role of the international community, of course the United Nations, but the international community otherwise, in conflict prevention and the importance of democratization, because democracies have the best opportunity to prevent crossing the threshold into mass violence. A cooperative international security regime to prevent the deadliest conflicts would require a number of components. One is a strong orientation to prevention through early warning of emerging conflict, including the capacity for objective analysis of potential warning signals. Another is an information system monitoring hotspots, providing early warning about buildup of weapons, the intensification of danger from any source, and especially incitement to violence. Reliable, systematic mechanisms for illuminating analysis based on deep knowledge of a particular area and of similar conflicts elsewhere. We also need visible, respected forums for discussion of problematic, disputed issues involving all the relevant parties, and for drawing the world's attention to the basic facts in a responsible way. We need opportunities for conflict resolution that are widely perceived as fair and could promptly be brought to bear on international and other intergroup grievances. We also need organized settings to encourage the expression of grievances in a way that foster empathy and restraint, utilizing to the extent possible culturally accepted mechanisms for reconciliation. We also need agreed upon principles and techniques for participation in the cooperative system that could provide benefit for all, an array of political, economic, technological, and psychological incentives and sanctions that can be brought to bear on contending party before they have crossed the threshold of mass violence. This is a very difficult task. It may well require one or two catastrophes before such a cooperative security system can be created. Perhaps the international community is most likely to learn by disaster. Let us hope that can be avoided. The question is whether we can now become more effective in dealing with deadly conflict on a consistent basis, especially developing mechanisms of prevention. The democracies could take the lead in formulating norms of decent behavior for all humanity with respect to such matters as weapons proliferation, that will be discussed in this meeting, socioeconomic development that is equitable, human rights, and democracy. They can include emerging democracies in these considerations, and to the extent possible, in due course, the entire international community. Such norms of decent behavior could be widely spread throughout the world in this era of pervasive communication, and they might be widely appealing to people in most countries to the extent they are understood. The democracies may act with the approval of and on behalf of the United Nations, or they may act in cooperation informally with the United Nations. Of course, such actions need not and preferably will not be military. Much more often, they should be political, economic, disease prevention, and other modalities. In almost all cases, it will be important for the democracies to consult widely and not to act unilaterally or harshly. This could be put on a systematic basis so that many other governments and non-governmental organizations would have a good idea about the considerations leading to a particular action and could participate in formulation of peacemaking and peace building. Just as Europe was poor and smashed after World War II and very much in need of economic and social development, so too are many other countries in need of similar development at this time. Looking back in retrospect, it is all too easy to assume that the recovery of Europe and Japan after World War II, and indeed the emergence of Germany and Japan as major democracies, was a more or less automatic process, but it was not. In fact, it was very difficult. It took a great deal of ingenuity and international cooperation to bring about these highly desirable outcomes. Now there is a need to build a world security system in which economic growth can occur with fairness and cultural diversity can be protected. The democracies are a very fortunate community with so much relevant experience in coping with the problems of modern societies. They have a moral imperative to address in a systematic, deliberate, long-term way the path to democratization around the world. What can be done to foster such an atmosphere and to build institutions for nonviolent problem solving throughout the world? New emerging and fragile democracies help to strengthen the political, need help to strengthen the political and civic infrastructure. They need technical assistance and financial aid to build the requisite processes and institutions. They need public education so that people can be familiar with what it takes to get this done. The compelling danger of weapons proliferation will sooner or later get the priority attention it deserves in the democratic community. In the present context, it is worth considering human rights and democratic institutions as criteria for intervention. That is, the less democracy and the less protection of human rights, the less tolerance by the international community of any weapons buildup, because sooner or later the weapons will be used, especially by authoritarian regimes. The authoritarian regimes are the most dangerous in many ways, and above all, for disastrous conflicts. Such efforts call for a commitment to the inherent legitimacy of a given society. This legitimacy is built on leadership that really reflects the wishes of the people. Attitudes respecting human rights and mechanisms that protect human rights. A personal stake for individuals in the society and the future of their nation so that sacrifices can be made in the nation-building process. And perhaps most important of all, tolerance for diversity, including religious and ethnic differences. Democracy is able to cope well with conflict nonviolently through institutional mechanism. It is a game that all can play with reasonable results so long as all accept the rules of the game, and the rules of the game are agreed upon and updated periodically by common consent. Such ideas are attractive in virtually all cultures once they are understood. Democracies need to communicate the crucial practical aspects of the democratic experience. They can demonstrate how to take different political arguments into account, to accommodate the views of different sectors, to work out choices that are fair to all, to be well aware of mechanisms for nonviolent conflict resolution. The democracies can help create an atmosphere in which ideals are meaningful and worth striving for, even though hard to attain. There's a great need for highly skillful mediators who enter into disputes, however informally, as a reasonably objective outside party trying to help contending parties see that they have similarities as well as differences, that they have the capacity, intelligence, and decency to find common ground. It is particularly important to develop a consensus around processes for sorting out difficult problems and to move toward institutions that can make such processes reliable and readily available. In short, from an early stage in democracy building, it is important that people understand the possibilities of nonviolent conflict resolution and the value of mutual accommodation, that in the long run, cooperation can lead to greater benefits than conflict. We must find ways to educate for democracy that are practical, Indeed, in the era of modern telecommunications, it might be feasible to have a worldwide democratic network under highly respected auspices, perhaps a mix of governmental and non-governmental supporters. Such a network could present many interesting examples of ongoing efforts to build and strengthen democratic institutions to rich and poor countries alike, in a variety of languages and adapted to many cultures. It would be feasible to enhance the level of understanding throughout the world in what is involved in democracy and its potential benefits for all. Combined with the sharpening focus on human rights and social justice and growing equitable economic well-being, the opportunities for violence prevention are improving. We must pool our strengths to extend these achievements and forge together an enduring peace in the 21st century. Thank you very much.